Thanks for tuning in to the Canadian Private Lenders Podcast, the show about starting a private lender in Canada, the mortgage industry, and the real estate industry. Your hosts are Neal Andrino and Ryan and Neal. Enjoy.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It's episode 37 of the Canadian Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts, Ryan and Neal. Neal, how you doing, buddy?
Very well. We talked about it in the last episode, but we're in a fancy new studio on our little road trip. So I'm enjoying it. It's nice. It's, again, just reminding me how much I need to upgrade my studio.
Yeah.
They got cable management here. There's bars going across. It's
looking good. Looking
Yeah,
good. Encourage people to check out the video for these couple episodes. And we're on the second leg of our Ontario road trip, and we've got another very special guest. We've got David Carter, partner with Grechi Carter. How you doing today, Dave?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me today.
Good to have you. Good to have you, man. So would love to, let's just dive right into it, right?
Of course.
We're going to talk some real estate. We're going to talk some real estate law. We're going to talk some private lending and a couple other bonuses maybe. So Dave, why don't you give a bit about your background here? I know you've got an extensive background in law, and I think it was in even in your blood before in the family. So I'd love to kind of hear, what got you to this point and how things have gone in the real estate space for you.
Yeah, sure. I do have a little bit of it in the blood. My father was a real estate lawyer. He was a big academic real estate lawyer. So that was his sort of passion in life was, go figure, real estate law. Mm-hmm. Of all things to pick that, I guess, in baseball. So I grew up around it a little bit. He would talk to us about it, ask us questions as kids, kind of push us as much as he could into doing it. And so naturally, coming through my sort of teens and early 20s in school, I hated it and wanted nothing to do with it. So I actually, coming out of law school, I was more geared and looking to work in sports management or sports law, agencies and that kind of thing. So I worked downtown at a big firm, coming right out of law school. Kind of thought, I don't know if this is for me. I'm really going to pursue the sports. And that was around, I guess it would have been 2012, which was the NHL lockout, which was really, that was a big hockey guy. And so I was, interviewing with some teams and agencies, and everything was kind of dead and at a standstill. And one of my buddies from law school, Daniele Grechi, sort of said, hey, I kind of want to do my own thing. I don't really want to do the big firm thing either. So why don't you just come do it with me? And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be, I'm going to go into sports management, be the next GM of the Leafs in like 20 years or whatever I thought.
Would have had 4 cups by now.
Yeah, I couldn't have had less. Anyway, after a little bit, he convinced me to just, at least, do it with him until the NHL restarted and, I got a job offer or whatever. And I said, fine, whatever, I'll help you out and we can do this together. So we kind of started organically doing files and little things here and there. And we got, so busy so fast that by the time the NHL restarted, I was kind of head underwater, just keeping going. And it was actually really, the thing that really pushed it over the edge for me to keep going with it was I kind of had this renaissance where I got to talk about the files that we actually kind of started doing a little bit of everything. So we, like most young, probably business people, but certainly lawyers, you kind of do, like we did a family case and, 18 civil cases and wills and estates and corporate and like anything anyone was like, we'll give you money to do this. We were like, yeah, sure. Right. Like we need to do something. And then we, started turning over and doing more and more real estate. And on those files, I got to talk to my dad about them and be like, hey, I'm seeing this crazy thing. What are you seeing? Because he was still practicing. Mm-hmm. And so we got to create this sort of new bond in my adult life with him, which was really special for me. Mm-hmm. And I loved getting to work with him and talk to him about stuff and, kind of develop a new relationship with him. And so I kind of forgot about, the sports management plan, and we just kept on going and building. And then, after a year or two, we kind of said, we've got enough real estate work why are we doing anything else? So we kind of turned off the taps of everything else that we were doing and focused on real estate. And we met some really good friends who were in private lending within about a year. And, they were foolish enough to give us all of their business and have us run all their deals. And so we, especially doing it for friends and at a pretty high volume quickly, we kind of became specialists in that. And that became a huge focus for us. And the last sort of 10 years, that's really what we've been focusing and building our business up as is private lending lawyers.
Wow.
So that's
very
sort of
cool
the
background.
Cole's notes of how we got there.
Just to tap into that. So going back to your education then, so with the thought of getting into sports management or the NHL, did you focus on like contract law at school, or did you touch on real estate law at all when you were in school?
Yeah. So funny enough, actually, my dad was a professor, and he was a professor at Queens where I went. So I did take his real estate course.
Okay, you had to. You had to check that box if you're going.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was taking a train for 2 hours out to Kingston.
Wow.
Right? He kind of looked at me when I was deciding what course to take. Like, if you don't do this, I may never speak to you. Yeah, like at least I won't speak to you for a month or two.
Yeah.
So I took, and that was really cool. It was like the one course that I think I went to every single class and paid attention because I got to see him in a completely different light at that point, right?
Did you get an A plus?
I think I did. Yeah. I think I had a grade. I was forced to, and I think back then you could still write your exams by hand, but they forced me to write it electronically with like a pseudonym number, so there was no way for him to know what my exam was or whatever. Yeah, I mean they're, they make a big deal about all that stuff. Law school, I guess, right?
For some reason, I thought your dad was a U of T professor.
So he is, or he was, so he did. He was U of T, Osgood, and Queens. He probably had some other stuff. He went all around the.
Wow! Right on.
Yeah, he loved it. That was his passion, and he got me into that stuff too. Pretty, I think I was probably like a fourth year lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And I was pretty young coming out of law school. I was probably like 24 or something. So like I was like mid-late 20s, and he kind of pushed me to start teaching with him, right? He's like, and he was mostly, I think he just wanted to see me taking it over and getting to talk to me about it. But he also, I think he kind of wanted to like have someone else do all the marking and have someone else do all the course prep. And if he's tired on this week, somebody else to do it. So he pushed me, and I started taking those, some of the courses over relatively young for me at the time. And then I kind of fell in love with that and getting to do the teaching. So now I've kind of basically been teaching in the fall at U of T, and then the winter at Osgood.
Oh, wow.
So I'm never going to go, I don't think, out to Queens and take that 2-hour train like you did, which always, seemed a little nuts to me, but they're here in Toronto. They're great schools.
Cool.
And it kind of forces me to keep up to date on my knowledge of the law. So.
I didn't realize we were going to have back-to-back professors.
I was just thinking, like, this
first two episodes.
Oh, you had a professor.
Doug is a professor at Guelph as well. So,
nice.
Yeah.
And he thought he was going to the NHL as well.
That's right.
He's something there.
It's something in the water in TO, man.
If you can't go into sports, you might as well teach.
That's our mentality, right? Start at 4 years old. Like we were talking before we started recording here, but
that's it.
That's too funny.
Yeah, I didn't get to start at 4. My kids they're on that. Like, I'll push them on that.
For sure. So you mentioned, go ahead, Neal.
I was saying, when you launched that business, how'd you get started going into starting a firm? Like, how did you draw a business to get things going?
Yeah. So, we basically, it was drumming it up. Like we would go door to door. We kind of started the, we went through our Rolodex of everyone we knew, and we knew a lot of young people, and then we had family connections. So we went through and we thought, okay, who's a realtor, who's a mortgage agent, who knows a realtor, who knows a mortgage agent. And we just called everyone, and we went out for lunch with every single realtor we could find and every single mortgage agent we could find. Yeah. And we would throw like parties, once a year and invite everyone. It wasn't just industry stuff. We'd invite everyone we knew and hope that someone would bring it was like kind of anyone in real estate, that you can bring them, just build up the Rolodex. And then we started offering, once we had a few realtors that we worked with and that liked us, we would kind of go through them and approach the brokerages and say, hey, can you, would you let us come in and talk to your agents and give a talk, right?
Nice.
So we'll give you like an hour or ideally less presentation on some topic that you want to hear about. We used to come up with all sorts of, what do you do about this defect in a property or, misrepresentations in a contract, like whatever we could think of, we came up with about, call it 15 set presentations, and then we would offer each brokerage, if you have interesting stuff you want to talk about, we'll put together a deck and come present on it.
Cool.
So we did a lot of luncheons that way, and that built up a lot of business. And then we used to sponsor a lot of golf tournaments, Simba and a few others. And so we'd have a booth, and then Daniele and I would, sometimes we'd play or bring staff to man the booth.
Sure.
We just tried to get out there and shake hands with everyone we possibly could.
It's interesting. It's not dissimilar to any new brokerage or new lender starting up too, just pounding the pavement.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that's sort of different for lawyers, we kind of have it easier, right? Like mortgage brokers, they have to go, they're sort of direct to consumer. You gotta have 1,000, potential clients, and you hope you get 20 or 30 or whatever. And maybe, I think lenders are probably more similar to lawyers, right? Like we just get to network the sort of the bigger fish brokers, right? Like instead of 1,000, exactly, right? And then you've got access to all their clients. So they kind of do a lot of the business development for you. So, that helped a lot. And then now the last sort of 7-8 years, when we've really focused on the private lenders, we've kind of focused on those, Simba, sponsoring events and getting out there. A lot of it's warm sort of handoffs and referrals. So we have a lot of our lending clients will introduce us to friends of theirs in the space, or other lenders that they know who are looking for lawyers who know it, right? Because everybody, you need sort of dedicated lawyers that understand and know private lending, right? It is different than regular real estate. So
absolutely.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to go back a step again. So obviously you and Daniele met and started Grechi Carter. How long's it been anyway since you've been in business?
So I think we're through 12. We're in our 13th year.
And did you guys meet at Queen's?
Yeah, we met at Queen's first week.
Oh, that's cool. That's sick.
I probably don't remember most of this.
One of those,
it was like the Frosh week or whatever for law students. But we obviously hit it off pretty quick. Yeah. We were both, sort of more into sports than we were into law at the time, but we really liked to argue. So that kind of, forced us to actually learn this stuff because we would just argue with each other about it.
Isn't that part of becoming a lawyer?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's the real training, right?
Of course, yeah.
And then we lived together for the last 2 years of law school, and then we kind of went our separate ways. Worked at different firms when we first came back, and then we both, realized that was not for us, and then came back together when I was trying to go into sports, and he was the startup guy, right? I probably wouldn't have done it on my own. Because we didn't have a book of business, right? We created it from scratch. Most lawyers go out 10 years in, you've got your book, you're comfortable, it's easy. It's like, and you're still scared. So he's the one with the big
kahunas. Yeah, right on.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say on this.
Go for it. Whatever you want.
Target audience is.
Let it go. Cool. So.
Good.
No, I was just sorry, Neal. I was just going to wrap up what I know the team's been steadily growing since I met you 4 or 5 years ago now. Yeah. So how big is the team now? Yeah,
so we're about 28 right now.
Wow,
so
damn.
So it's grown a fair bit. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely grown a fair bit because we started just the two of us. So our first, let's say 20, 30 deals or whatever, Daniele and I did ourselves. So, and if sort of the general process of what our lawyer does. We did all the, we created the paperwork from scratch, typed up all the documents for clients to sign. We did our own bank running to the bank, certifying our checks, depositing, like all the clerking. We did that, and then it's just grown sort of exponentially every year. So
that's sweet.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun ride.
Has it felt good? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first year or two were a little stressful. That's the days where you're really grinding and you're not seeing the financial rewards at all are really, those are hard, obviously. I think you kind of forget how hard they are once things turn. But the last 7-8 years have been amazing. And because it's our own business, we kind of, we're able to manage our own time and work from home if we need to, and we're out meeting people, right? So, some of my work days will be hanging out with, Ryan or somebody on a golf course, right? And I get to call that work. Like what a wonderful life that is.
Yeah.
So, that stuff I obviously love. And then I'm, like I said, I didn't initially plan to do real estate. It wasn't like I was,
come to love it now.
But I actually have. And I think part of that is once you're really good at something, there's a satisfaction that comes with that.
Yeah. And
so being able to give, advice that I think other lawyers wouldn't be giving and a little value add, there's, it's almost like you get off on that. So, I really enjoy that.
Interesting. Before we get into the private side, for my own context, so I have my real estate license in Halifax. Are the contracts here provincial, or does everyone have their own contract? Because it's a standardized contract in Nova Scotia. So
for purchasing and selling, for purchasing and selling, we have the Realtors Association has a sort of standard agreement that they have for all their realtors to use.
Has it always been that?
For the last 30 years. It's a long time it's been like that. Now, you don't have to use that by any means. So people can do their own agreements. For residential, unless you're not using a realtor, it's always going to be the AREA form that's used. Even if you're not, like, we have clients every once in a blue who will be like, hey, we're cutting out the realtor, we're doing a private or whatever. And if they're asking us, we'll still use the AREA form just because it's easy. It's sort of fill in the blanks. You can customize the back end of it, right?
Yeah.
And then on the commercial side, they also have a draft agreement from AREA.
Oh, it's shit. Okay.
Yeah, for commercial, and it's used on mostly smaller deals.
Yeah.
Anything more than 5-10 mil. Usually, you're bringing a lawyer in to draft it.
Yeah.
And most firms who do commercial work have their own standard agreement anyway, so it doesn't cost you $20,000 for the agreement.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the
interesting.
Goes,
okay, so it's pretty similar for the most part. We don't really same thing. It would be the commercial brokerages have their documentation for all the commercial side. We don't have anything from our real estate board, really.
Right.
Trying to think.
Oh, so it's brokerage specific though.
But on the residential side, it's all NSAR.
Are they all pretty similar between the brokerages, or?
Yeah, for the most part, there's not a ton of change. You don't really hear people like getting swindled on some small thing that got slipped in or something. It's.
Do you guys bring in lawyers early on, like during conditional periods or pre-offer?
So technically, in a residential deal, like a lawyer is supposed to be involved during that conditional period.
Supposed to be.
He's supposed to be. They get the documents maybe 50% of the time.
That's pretty good. We're way less.
I might be overestimating.
Yeah, no. Res, I think we get we see an agreement before it's signed or before it's firmed up. Maybe at most 1 out of 20 deals.
Okay,
right?
so maybe
when it's too late to help. It's just the system.
My group, we get them over. I'll say that, but we have a fulfillment team that sends all the documents around.
Yeah.
But for the average realtor, probably not getting it out in time.
Yeah.
And then it's the day before. They're like, "This is closing," and it's like, "Okay, we need you to get this done."
Oh, God,
But commercial, they definitely get engaged earlier on, especially if there's an LOI and stuff.
Yeah.
But
same
concepts then. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We were just saying, then you got into the private world. How did that come to be? Like, was it by fluke, or was it always in the back of your head that you want to represent some lenders for consistent volume? Or
no, you know what? Not at all. We started doing purchases, sales, institutional refis, some small commercial stuff, and which is kind of like this classic way of how anybody gets into real estate.
Yeah.
but we didn't know anything about private lending. Like to us, a private mortgage was with Home Trust, right?
Yeah.
Or Equitable. So, and then we met a couple buddies of ours now, Ryan, who you know. We went out for a couple lunches with them, and they were, sort of saying, "Hey, we need lawyers. Can you guys help us?" And we said, "Of course we can help you. You want to give us work? We can do it. We'll figure it out." So we started doing all of their business, and then they had other contacts, and we realized pretty quickly. I mean, once you do something a couple of times, usually, as long as you understand it, you can kind of figure it out. So we kind of did a trial by fire, right? Like we figured it out from scratch. We, we went through the first, 50 deals or whatever we did. And, we learned, all the different parts of the puzzle that you don't know as a an academic lawyer or somebody coming out of law school or anything like that. Like, you got to keep the mortgage broker happy. And even if they don't send you their letter of direction, it's probably there. You should follow up so it's not missed, so that they're not pissed off after the transaction's over. All sorts of stuff with debt payouts and timelines. How do you close in 2 days? Can you? Title insurance. Like it was, we were getting all sorts of stuff thrown at us that we just, we kind of had seen little bits of on the institutional side, but it was newer. We saw wild stuff back then. Like this is 10 years ago, and it was, private lending 10 years ago was a little bit more Wild West than it is now. We've sort of had a bit of a consolidation where there's a lot more institutional, but sort of small mid mix and groups and funds that are out there. Back then though, we used to get tons of individuals lending through this broker or that broker. We had, and you'd see just, I call it like garbage stuff. Like I won't say, obviously I can't say names or anything, but I remember that we had one source that we'd see deals on, and they were like, I think they were getting all their stuff from collections agencies and stuff like that. But like the fees were crazy, right? Yeah. And then, it was, we sort of saw that stuff in the first year or two that we were doing it. And then we were really lucky. We got some amazing clients that we just, we kept building good clients and sort of letting go of the ones we didn't enjoy working with. And to the point now where we've got this amazing group of clients that if they call me, I'm happy. Like it's a chance to pick up the phone and talk to a friend, basically. Yeah. Right. And if I take them out golfing or we go somewhere, it's just seeing friends. We get to chat about, sometimes they're stressed out about files, and it's not all, lollipops and rainbows or anything, but it's an awesome way to work when you can be there. And there's a lot of young people in the industry. Yeah. So it's been perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. We've been super fortunate at Keystone to have Dave drafted a lot of our contract language, which has been excellent, and makes us feel very comfortable attacking the space, and especially where we are spread geographically across 4 different provinces, and occasionally even in Ontario as well. So 5 different provinces, really. But that's been really great. So just on that note, why do you feel it's important for private lenders to choose a good or experienced legal partner?
Yeah, I mean, number one, this is where problems happen, is on the closing side, right? I mean, most lenders if you can't underwrite a deal, you really need a good lawyer because they should be your fallback, right? I mean, we're not.
That's so true.
Right.
That is so true.
I mean, we're not supposed to be value underwriters. But we still catch things that, if something doesn't make sense, like if for whatever, and we see this every once in a while where, there's an extra line of credit or a HELOC or something that was never disclosed to the lender that probably could have been pulled on purview or whatever on the lender side. But, we will always catch that and advise lender, hey, just make sure you've seen this. Hey, these numbers are different than what was in your instructions or your commitment. Yeah. So you get a little bit of a safety net there. But ultimately, a lot of people look at residential real estate as, whatever, you're getting title insurance, you get a mortgage, what could go wrong? And, let's say for 8 out of 10 deals, that's probably fair. You're probably, like we had lots of lenders who, who probably could have lent money out the last 10 years with their eyes closed and been fine because property values went up. So if you didn't do a great job with it, who cares? It's kind of swept under the rug when it's worth 20% more anyway in a year.
Yeah.
But 10 to 15, maybe 20% of deals will have hair on them, right? We're kind of coming out, for just a quick example off the top of my head, of the notice of security interest in Ontario. And this might not mean much to you guys. And I don't know what you do in Nova Scotia, or your other provinces, but we've probably talked about this, Ryan, at some point, but we had this big problem where, equipment renters and finance companies would lease out, furnaces, could be windows, doors, hot water tanks, AC.
They're leasing
units.
windows and doors?
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would, instead of like a straight buy, they would finance it out. Yeah. So that's on the small, we see that less, but any kind of equipment that's getting brought to a property.
Yeah.
We just had a fight on the windows and doors. So it's sort of top of mind on a power of sale deal that we had.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was ridiculous, but we won. So it's okay. But what they would do is they would finance it out at, aggressive terms, and then they would register it on title. And the priorities were all messed up because most lenders think, hey, it's priority of security interest is just who registered on title first. And that's actually not what the nuance of the law says. It actually depends upon in Ontario, the Personal Property Securities Act. And there were situations where these finance companies kind of said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll discharge the notice of security interest and then just re-register it after your mortgage. And a lot of lenders just and lawyers took that as like, okay, that makes sense. We'll have registered, then they'll have registered, we'll have priority. And it turned out when we looked at, the nitty gritty of the Personal Property Securities Act, they didn't have priority. Right. So, and may not be a big deal, but some of these were $20,000, $30,000 liens, which if you end up, and this is why I say, if you did your loans in 2017, 18, 19, a year later, you built up another 200,000 equity. Who cares if it turned out there was a encumbrance ahead of you? But if you did it in the last year or the last 2 years when the market's kind of been sort of squiggly, that can be a big thing, especially depends on the loan to value the lenders are going to and how risky they are. But, on the enforcement side, we've seen a lot in the last year where, the lender's pretty close to a shortfall. And if we're paying out $30,000 to a finance company, that's money out of the lender's pocket. So we've seen it. So there's a lot of stuff that you see in the private lending world that lawyers you have to know about and you have to be careful with. And a lot of it's the same problems coming up over and over, but sometimes we see, you see new stuff. And I can say because we've hired 5 associates or whatever we've gone through in the last 4 or 5 years, let's say, and, hiring out lawyers for this stuff. When you do the same thing all the time, if you haven't sort of thought about it from the ground up from scratch and you've just been sort of told, here's what you do on a real estate deal, which is what a lot of firms do. When a problem comes up, you don't know what to do. Right? You need those sort of mental pathways of, I've thought about this from the beginning. I've thought about everything before. So when I see something new, I can kind of, I know where to take that. So you got to be quick. You also have to be quick on your feet because in private lending, we don't get usually, I think you used to give us pretty good turnaround times, but usually we don't get 2 weeks, right? It's like within a week, we've got to close these deals.
For sure.
So if we get some squirrely property that's got some issues on it, it's not like we can say, all right, well, we've got a month to figure this out.
Right.
We don't even have a week to figure it out. We have to look at this and make a pretty concrete decision on how it needs to be dealt with within a day.
Yeah.
So it really helps if you've seen the stuff before, but even if inevitably you see stuff that's new, you need to be able to be quick on your feet. And that's something that's, it's not just experience. That's something you got to sort of suss out for your lawyers and, test them on, I guess.
Sure.
You got me caught up on the registration of like who's owed first. So if there's a mortgage,
Yeah.
and then you finance your windows and doors, because I didn't even think that's a thing. And then you're saying they're pulling off for a second, so a second mortgage can go in, and then they re-register. But does that person with the windows and doors still actually sit in second place?
So there was a case where based on how they did it, the second loan had priority over these, we call them fixtures or like the equipment, and the first didn't because it had been bought out by someone new afterwards. So you can get into all sorts of crazy priority things, right? Where like a second has priority over something that a first does not. And then that one went through appeal, obviously, because they couldn't figure it out. But yeah, so the basic Coles notes of this, the equipment stuff is the priority is determined on when the fixture company's interest attached to the equipment.
Okay.
So if you have so sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, we're going to give you, $30,000, almost like a loan secured against your windows and doors. So we've seen that.
Yeah.
So that's a pre-existing set of windows and doors.
Yeah.
It attaches the moment they lend the money, they sign the paperwork, and they say it is. So any mortgages that are on title before that time where that interest attaches get priority.
Yeah.
Anything afterwards, you're tough luck. You won't have priority. But if they're going to install something new, so they say, hey, we're going to give you a new furnace, something new. It attaches actually before they install it. And then they install it in, they'll have priority essentially over everything.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and there's ways that you can go around. So what we end up doing is, so the finance companies were pretty smart. They went and tried to trick everybody and said, we'll discharge it off of title.
Yeah.
Which actually doesn't remove their security interest under the PPSA, Personal Property Securities Act, and then we'll re-register it. And everyone thought, okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was saying you either have to give us a postponement or you have to sign a letter that by discharging you are postponing your interest specifically, and you are agreeing that you will not have any priority, and that's not enough.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was
Crazy.
anyway, and it's kind of a moot thing now. It used to scare everybody, but they've now just passed legislation in Ontario saying this is all nuts. Why are you, registering these things on people's homes? And allegedly they were having sort of door-to-door salesmen going, getting a lot of elderly people and people with no, who didn't know what they were doing to sign off. And here's a new furnace for you. You don't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
And then, you just pay like $20 a month or whatever. And in the fine print, it said, well, registered against your house.
Yeah.
Right. And it was hurting people, but people couldn't close their purchases and sales, and it was tying up title. And so the province said, enough with all this shenanigans. We're just not going to allow any registration for these, consumer good products for like residential on title anymore. So we had this old, it's like the
Those
classic.
companies are brutal. They're like scam companies,
they're not
man.
my clients, so I can agree with you. I got lots of clients that I can't. If they're brutal or not on the record, but it created a problem, and so Ontario is going very eyes open right now on registrations against people's homes. So
Good.
they are really trying to clean this stuff up. It is good.
Yep.
And it makes our lives a lot easier.
Totally.
Because this is one thing less that we have to worry about.
Absolutely. So obviously it's been a bit of a bananas market for the last several years, specifically since COVID. Alternative and private share has increased significantly. So I'd love to hear how that's impacted your business. And is that when you had the boom in hiring staff as well? Does that kind of coincide with that?
Yeah. It's a little bit, I think, different from us. Like we kind of have our own very specific niche experience. But like we still do a handful, like maybe 50 to 60 purchases, residential purchases, sales, institutional refinances, small commercial transactions. We still do all of that. But it's now, I don't know, maybe a quarter of what we do, like 75% of what we do is just private lending, or more. And so I call it the res, the sort of purchase sale institutional really did fall off a cliff the last 2 years, right? Like we saw at least, I'd say like a 50% drop in volume of that stuff. But our private mortgage volume probably, and that's just transactional, not even touching the enforcement side, but our transactional volume probably jumped up. We probably tripled or quadrupled our volume. And part of that is, I think the private mortgage space got a little busier. I think the spreads maybe between institutional and privates maybe went down a little
Converged a bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So that probably helped. But on the other hand, we saw a lot of lenders who were sort of holding off and pulling money off the streets the last 2 years. So I don't know what the numbers across the market are. I know we went way up, but I think a big part of that was also we picked up, 7 or 8 new big lenders, and some of our existing lenders, got
volumes
doubled in size.
Sure.
So it's kind of like, even if the pie gets smaller, if your share of the pie gets bigger, you still got a nice big piece of pie.
Yeah.
Right. Keep growing that pie.
Exactly.
That's become
Keep
a
growing
theme
and keep eating.
for this show as well.
Where the market you said kind of got squiggly, has that caused more private lending business? Have you seen a pickup on that side of things?
It's funny. I mean, so we saw that in, I guess, 2017 when they introduced the foreign buyer tax, and they jacked up rates and did some of those, more aggressive ratios and criteria for borrowers. And the market took, a 10% bath or whatever, early 2017. And we did see a big spike in privates at that point where they came rushing in to fill the gap, because all the banks would say, oh, the reappraised low. And we had a lot of clients in that space who were doing, hey, we'll bridge it. We'll come top it up. So we saw a lot then. I don't think we saw that much of it now or the last 2 years. But we did see a lot of purchase mortgages. Like that probably increased a little bit. But I really do think it was more, we got so many new lenders.
General growth of the firm.
Yeah, just generally like our lenders got busier and more of them. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Want to hit on your favorite subject next?
Yeah.
Oh, baby. That sounds great.
Yeah, we've been asking about this. So I'm in real estate sales also in Nova Scotia. And we've been pretty fortunate. Our market's held pretty strong. Volumes have fallen off a cliff as well, but pricing's remained decent. Kind of, what are you seeing here in the Ontario market? Like, again, you've alluded to it being squiggly. Where do you see it going? What do you think's happening right now?
So in general pricing or
niche in general pricing? We'll say in general pricing, and kind of like that marketplace. Like, where do you think it's going to end up in the next, let's say, 12 months and 24 months? Just where's your outlook?
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? Positive, negative, flat?
Yeah, and I hate giving my outlook because every time I've given an outlook or talked to people at this stuff, I'm always wrong.
Nice.
Like when COVID came around, I was telling everybody, "Oh man, like this is gonna be horrible."
Bomb falling out.
Oh, yeah, bomb falling out. And then like a month later, like a rocket ship. Yeah, I mean, so what I've seen, we kind of had a big lull in the end of 2022, and then over the winter it was really pretty slow.
Yeah, and
then in that sort of spring, I think it was, of 2023, we had like 2 months where prices like picked back up, and people thought
we were back.
People thought we were back and we'd hit the bottom, right? This is kind of the thing with Toronto real estate is everybody's so obsessed with it, and we talk about it so much that everyone just believes long-term it'll be good. And so it's like, where's the bottom?
Yeah.
People are no one's scared of like fundamentals and like I think we're starting to come back to that a bit where people are like, yeah, the fundamentals are like
a little bit out of whack here, right?
Yeah. At these interest rates, So yeah, the market came back to life a little bit.
Yeah.
There. And then it kind of, we didn't get drop-offs in rates in 2023. We thought again we were getting them end of 2023. Everyone's, whatever it was, 5, 6, interest rate decreases in 2024. And then, the narrative just keeps on changing and pushing back. And so I personally, I look at it and I'm like, interest rates they've got to drop a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Presumably get one more in the next 6 months. I think that's sort of the expectation.
Yeah.
I know the American side, they were there's been talk they might push that back a little bit more the last week, especially. So to me, right, a lot of this stuff, like it's like with stocks, right? Like you hear information out there and you think, okay, I got to be rushing. But like everybody's already acted on whatever you've heard.
Yeah.
Right. That information's already out there. It's public. It's already been digested by institutions. So, if you're thinking, hey, interest rates are going to drop 6 times next year, that's what everyone's talking about. You're not the only person thinking, I better jump in now because it's the bottom and it's all going to go up.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's thinking that. And then if interest rates don't go down 6 times, it's all expectation based. Right now, suddenly it's like, well, shit,
What happening?
those numbers aren't working that we forecast. Maybe we should be offering less. So, I think I'm kind of in the majority, I think, on this, where I think it's going to be pretty soft for the next year or so. I don't know that, if we've hit the bottom, I think we're kind of, it's a sort of a prolonged bottom.
Right.
Maybe it goes up a little bit, but I don't see a big, huge, dramatic increase, but what do I know, right?
Yeah.
Like I thought the same thing, coming in through COVID. So
Yeah.
Soft is normalized too. Like since COVID, we've had this insane expectation of return. Like it's not real. It never has been like that, really.
Yeah.
But I have one more random question, but I'll maybe wait until you're done.
Well, no, I was going to ask. I thought you were going to go down the enforcement route there on that question. So I wanted to touch on that too.
even more fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, I'm just looking at what we have written down here. But on the private lending side, how has that been, like the change in increase of power sale and enforcement? What does that look like? Have you been seeing more enforcement recently? Are you seeing more delinquencies?
A lot of doom and gloom in the media too.
I'm a doom and gloom guy.
Loves the delinquencies have doubled this year,
especially because we had like ultra low. So it's like they pay
coming
up
off
a little
COVID
bit.
lows, right? So
Yeah, and I think you guys know you got to be careful with what you see and read in the media because there's a lot of, you can kind of play fast and loose with some definitions, right? Like, is a delinquency just you're 2 weeks behind, or are you, 3 months behind?
Totally.
Yeah.
And we've, I've watched some of the Canadian bank stocks just get hammered in the last 2 years. Like every time they set aside loss provisions, right? And I sit there thinking like half of their, residential book is insured more or whatever. I mean, it's not half, but a lot of this is insured mortgages anyway.
Yeah.
And the rest, they're at 75, 80%.
They're not losing.
And if they are coming up for renewal, they've been paying that mortgage down for 5 years, from 80 back 5 years ago. And the market went up from 5 years to now,
2%
right?
rate, so they're actually making some pay down on it.
So for the major banks who are going up to 80 on uninsured or whatever it is, unless it was within the last year or 2 years and they gave a 1 or 2 year mortgage, I don't see the avenue for, like, I think they're probably more at risk on their commercial portfolios.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Commercial book is the one that I think is
like the res side. I don't know.
Don't see it.
I don't personally see it for them. Private lending side, it really depends on the lender, right? Like
Totally.
if you're going to 90
You're
or
going
95%,
yeah.
and we're all, 1 year mortgages, right?
Yep.
6 month, 1 year, maybe 2. Like we do have some private lenders who go do some blended 3-5 year, but that's very minority.
Sure.
Right? Mostly it's 1 year.
Yeah.
So those are, where you will, and we do, like I have seen a lot, big increase in the last 2 years in our enforcement side for sure. And I mean, that's sort of part and parcel of going to higher LTVs. And then you've got, I think, our lenders have generally been pretty good. So we have, we've seen more enforcement. And a lot of that is because 5 years ago, if you had a borrower who couldn't pay their mortgage when it came due on maturity, they could still sell or refi, and they had a ton of equity to protect. So they weren't going to let a lender step in there and sell it.
Sure.
But now, if you gave a mortgage to even 80% 2 years ago, and the market drops 10%, suddenly there's not a lot of room there left for the borrower. So the borrowers don't have that incentive to take over. They can't refinance to pay you out because there's not enough equity in the property. They could sell, but you still got to pay a realtor 5% in closing costs, and
you got to find a new place to live.
And a lot of people, and most people, right? This is not just for people underwater on their mortgages, but most people don't want to sell at a 10% loss. Like mentally, we've kind of ingrained it in our culture and in Canada that real estate goes up.
You got to make money on that house.
Right. And people just can't say, I got to, some do, but a lot of people just can't do it.
Yep.
So they sit there. So really the problem we've seen is the strategy on the borrower side has turned from being, working with lenders and saying, I'll sell it. I'll do this. Give me 3 months. And work with me a little bit. And our lender's saying, hey, we got equity in the property. Fine. We'll help you out, give you a little bit of time. To borrowers are just trying to delay things as long as they can, stay in the place, rent free, and it's a sad, place to be for them. And it's not good for the lender, obviously, because if it takes a year to kick them out, and we're seeing a lot of delays and backlog in the courts, that's a year of extra interest that's running. If you're a second, that's running on the first ahead of you and on your mortgage.
Yep.
So we've seen a lot more enforcement. I don't know if I would say it's because borrowers are less able to pay. I mean, I think generally salaries have been going up. People are well employed, but I think it's the incentives have kind of turned around, and there's less equity to protect for borrowers. So we see a lot more people just dropping off the keys or kind of saying, well, until the sheriff shows up, good luck.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
The last question I thought of as I was just sitting here was, I remember seeing an article in the paper about people like selling homes that weren't even theirs, like
a fraud.
Yeah, fraudulently doing that. How? What's going on? Like how?
Yeah,
asking for a friend.
How are they doing this?
Can you write down exactly how to
exactly how I would do it? So we've always had a lot of real estate fraud.
Yeah,
that's why we have such a massive title insurance industry is there. Like that's the biggest thing title insurance therefore is to protect from fraud. Our province, we protect from fraud, from the government. There's protections for homeowners if you're defrauded. But it's always been there and it's always been a problem. And, if you just think about how sophisticated some of these fraudsters are with like credit card scams and like gift card scams and like we had, we've seen them where they, they'll email from somebody in the, it'll show up as the name of like the CEO or the director or like could be one of your names, right, to one of your employees, and that's how it'll show up. And I mean, if you look at it carefully, usually there's signs.
The email,
but there's a lot of there's at least some sophistication that goes into that. And then when you start putting real estate into the game where it's $1 million or $2 million that these crooks can get, you can get some really sophisticated fraudsters out there. So there's a couple, sort of things that have that we've seen. One on the when real estate's owned through a corporation, sometimes what they'll do, I don't know if you're taking notes over there.
Yeah.
Is they'll change they'll do an amendment to the articles and change the directors and file that with the province. And then they go to the lawyer and say, hey, I'm the director of this company. Here's the articles, you can pull it, search it online. It shows this new person as a director. I'm taking a mortgage on the property, and then they're gone. So lawyers have to be really careful about checking to see if there's recent activity with directors and officers. And then the big thing that we've seen recently is, through COVID, most of the lawyers went from in-person meetings with clients were mandatory, right? So we met every single client in person in our office. They had to get to Yonge and, for us, they had to get to Yonge and Eglinton, deal with the parking and all the, traffic. But COVID hits and the province said, well, what the hell are we going to do? We can't have people meet, They
Yeah.
could have said you could still meet your lawyers. It's a essential service, but they didn't. They said, we're just going to relax this. And every lawyer was for the first time ever entitled to do fully remote video conference signings. And we still are, right? And it's a lot easier to do identity fraud on a virtual signing.
Sure.
So there's been a lot of work. The Law Society has we've passed new rules. You need new software to do identification, verification, and vetting this stuff.
Cool.
So we've been putting measures on the back end in place to protect lawyers and the public. But it's always kind of like it's like a game of cat and mouse, right? Like we catch the fraudsters doing one thing, and we quickly come up with some ways to stop them, and then they come up with something new,
else. Sure.
and then it's so we're always sort of chasing that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's, and I think maybe there's something in there about people. Everybody wants a quick buck, so I think there's probably
So
a lot
empty
of people
houses
out
owned by
there.
corporations.
Well, yeah, and the other one is also the Airbnb stuff has been an easy avenue, right? So people will rent out on it, they'll Airbnb a house, and then they'll quickly do showings. They'll list it and do showings, right? And then they've got access, right? So got to be careful about that stuff too.
Wow.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah,
from
it's a
your
new
list,
world,
Neal?
right? So we're all
Sure
kind of
is.
figuring it out as we go on that side.
Yeah, and there's always people doing weird shit to make a scam. But no, that's everything I got.
Just to wrap up here, Dave. So I want to touch on Neal's favorite topic, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh boy.
I know you're a diehard like me, Dave. So my typical question.
Keyword is
You started to-
dying hard.
Dying hard. Yeah,
Over
great
and
point.
over
Great,
and over.
great point.
Yeah.
Gonna use that here on forward.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful being a Leaf fan.
So what I typically ask some of the Leaf fans we've had in the past in this podcast
Why?
was
Why?
this is that should be the question. But this was pre-elimination, so a lot of I was being overly optimistic as usual, saying when the Leafs win the Stanley
is
Cup,
it.
who's going to be the MVP?
Right.
And it was often Matthews, Nylander.
Sure.
But it was never Mitch Marner for whatever reason. So that's what my question is to you. So this offseason, are the Leafs going to make a big move? And are they going to move out Mitch Marner? And if so, if they do, where's he going and what type of return do you expect?
Oh, you're just playing into my hands. Yeah. I don't know. To be honest, I loved Mitch Marner.
Yeah,
I thought he
me
was
too.
awesome. I mean, it's so sad as a Leaf fan. Like, for how long did we, growing up,
Pain.
you're about the same
About the
age
same age,
bracket
yeah.
as me.
Yeah.
We grew up and it was like the Leafs never have homegrown talent,
Yeah.
right? We trade away all our picks. It's all old guys coming in at the end of their career. That's why we
Overpay for
can't
old
win.
guys. Yeah.
And then it was, Don Cherry's, we'd have no Canadians. We'd have no good Toronto boys.
Yeah.
Right? It's all Europeans and whatnot. And then we finally draft and develop a Toronto superstar.
Yeah.
And it was scripted to be the greatest thing to get behind. And it just hasn't worked. And Tavares comes home, same story.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of go back and forth with Marner. I really want to cheer for him. And he's so good, so smart. He's an awesome guy to watch play the game. On the other hand, it just hasn't seemed to work. They're not going to trade Matthews or Nylander. They're locked in for forever, and that's not going to happen. And Tavares is the captain. He's not going to move.
He's not going anywhere.
So
yeah.
I can see the reasons that they would trade Marner. It will be, it's kind of a colossal failure on the organization that they couldn't help him get over the hump.
Yep.
I think that, obviously it speaks partly to him. He hasn't gotten it done. But I think mostly that's on the organization. And it's going to be sad. Do I think they'll do it? I don't know. I have no clue. It's hard. I mean, the guy doesn't have to agree to anything.
That's right.
My take would be he's probably going somewhere, Vegas or somewhere nice.
Yeah. Vegas, Nashville,
New York,
and
North Carolina. Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, he's from Toronto, though.
I know.
Like,
it is
he's
sad.
got to be pissed, right?
It's
he
sad.
wants, as much as people, say he doesn't care. Like, that guy wants to win here.
Of course.
That's
of course
his,
he does.
lifelong dream.
Yeah, you can see the
he's
frustration on his
proud.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's tough.
but what's he going to do? If they say they're not going to sign him, is he going to...
You're not maximizing your value if you don't move now.
It would just be such a gong show next year.
It will
if
be.
he goes into the year
Yeah.
on the Leafs without a contract extension, he's going to walk for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, You look at how Tavares just got tarred and feathered. Like even Sundin, remember when he left and he nixed a trade and we were trying to rebuild
the
Muskoka Five, and like that didn't kill his legacy.
No.
But
it tarnished it a bit for a year or two there.
A little bit. And people were, and Mitch is already getting flack because he took too much money or whatever, right?
Well, he was given too much money.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
right? He was given too much money. Yeah. Well, people don't look at it like that. They look at it, he took too much money. He extracted it. He extorted the team, right? Like,
just think, Dave, in a different life, that could have been you signing that
giving
contract
him that
with
money.
Mitch.
I know, right? Yeah, gladly. I would have loved that.
Well, that's awesome. That's a good spot to wrap. Really appreciate your time, Dave, and insight. That was an awesome interview. Anything else, Neal?
Oh, nice meeting you, man.
Nice to meet you guys, or nice to meet you, Neal.
Yeah,
and good to see you again, Ryan.
Absolutely.
And thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
Hey guys, it's Neal Andrino, your co-host and your co-founder at Keystone Capital and Director of Investor Relations. I'm also a real estate agent, real estate investor, and business owner.
And your co-host and co-founder of Keystone Capital Group, Ryan McNeil. Keystone is licensed under the Mortgage Regulations Act of Nova Scotia, license number 3000549, and through FCMB, license 88799. Keep in mind, the views of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not financial advice.